Senator Castro, thanks for your time. So we're just here to talk about a bill you introduced to suspend the zoning code and Saipan Zoning Law for 5 years. So tell us what your thinking behind this is.
So just even when I was serving as a representative in the House, we had several businesses that have been sharing their concern, their challenges with zoning. In fact, zoning was the #1 agency that they stressed over. At the same time, even our residents were, they felt that the zoning office was encroaching on things that they shouldn't be going into, property rights, and and in speaking with members when I was still in the House side, they felt the same way. A lot of them were there when the zoning law was implemented, and just reading the law itself, it seems like we're deviating from the initial intent of the zoning. I believe the law as a whole is a good law, but it's the implementation of the law there's a disconnect between what the intent of the law was and how it's being implemented today. To give you an example, there's still a lot of junk cars in the villages. There's, we feel like where the meat, the things that really matter when it comes to zoning, it's not being addressed as quickly. But when it comes to like the commercial side, it's also very it's very problematic. Meaning, like the process, there's a lot of barriers to getting started. So like even a company like Threads Guam, like that's one of the first things they mentioned. Like it took so long. In other places to get a business started, you can get your business license within a few days. But there's just a lot of variability, and it shouldn't be that way. Now with this economic situation, we need to kind of really assess our regulations. Do they make sense? Are they hurting us? Because when people decide to invest, and there's so much barriers, like it not only costs businesses, but at the same time, they're gonna reconsider if they even want to invest here. But in terms of our residents, that's a big part. Like, I mean, we have Article 12, and property rights is a big thing. When I lived in the States, that's one thing that I valued about the CNMI, is that I wouldn't see the stuff that I was seeing in Oregon or Washington, where people were losing their property because of, like, maybe they cannot afford to fix their home, right? Especially the at-risk, the most vulnerable populations. So now I'm starting to see signs, and I'm like, hey, we need to reassess this, because our laws are supposed to align with our community, our values, what's important to us. And the last thing I want to see is our Commonwealth turn into another, city type, like no compassion, like, hey, and then if, let's say, agencies put a lien on the property or whatever, who's it gonna go to? Is it gonna go back to the government? The government is really supposed to serve the people and not be this hoarder of assets. The intent is good, but I just think we really need to hold off and assess and make sure that the initial intent of the law is aligned with what the authors envision, and at the same time in line with what our people expect from a government agency. In terms of the employees, the law that I introduced will transfer them and their all FTEs to DPW. So we don't want to fire anyone, but we want to make sure that we really assess the services that we're providing to the community. Like, And at the same time, maybe it's an opportunity for those in zoning. Like a lot of businesses have been complaining that why is zoning asking for building, like, plans, and there's nobody certified to look at those blueprints, right? But DPW is. So maybe during this short transfer, they can get the professional development that they need, and the two agencies can help each other, but at the same time help the people. It's also not fair that it's a Commonwealth law, but it only applies to Saipan. And I don't blame Rhoda and Tinian for like saying, hey, let's put a hold on that first. Because after coming back from Rhoda especially, they need all the help that they can get in terms of incentivizing businesses to open up. And main intent of this goal is to reassess everything, this zoning law, because it's getting out of, in my opinion, it's getting out of hand.
And I'm sure you've thought about this, but at the end of the 5 years, is the goal to streamline or create an entirely new process? I guess that's what the point of the 5 years is, but in your mind, how do you see it? What do you see the final product being? So
there's two versions of the bill that I was working with legal counsel on. So like the second version, the legal counsel, kind of like the research that came back also was like looking at other jurisdictions and how they handle it. So in other jurisdictions, the kind of correlation was that it'll be under agency like DLNR. Our version in the CNMI would be DLNR, like lands and survey, something like that with a board. But it's like even that agency right now is, they don't have the, I feel like we need to help them also. So we don't want to set them up for failure. Like I said, when it comes to zoning, right? Like the laws are good in terms of like things like poker establishments, where they should be, where they shouldn't be, or other industries like laundromats. And so maybe one process could, like in terms of this suspension, right? Reviewing the process, getting the Chamber of Commerce involved, or not even just the chamber, because a lot of times the chamber doesn't really represent like 100% of the business community. There's a lot of people that, especially small businesses, that maybe are not able to attend all the meetings because they're running their business. So we really need to kind of like what Mayor Arby is doing with some of the business communities, having smaller meetings with them and really getting a good input. But for example, do we really need an inquiry and a clearance when it comes to zoning? Like here's the process. Like for example, you want to open up a business. Let's say it's an LLC. You go to tax and rev physically, right? You get the application. Then you have to go to zoning, which is a different location. You get the inquiry. Then you go back, make the payment, because zoning is not the place that you make payment. You have to make payment at Treasury, right? So that's all that runaround. That's only for the inquiry. After that, you have to get a clearance, and then go back. If it's a LLC, you have to go to Commerce and submit all your articles of incorporation, and you haven't even gotten started, and you're dealing with all these fees, maybe $2,000, $3,000 in fees. And that's not how our government should be focused on making money off the permit and the fees. We should help the business succeed first. Then when they win, we win. When the business wins, our community wins. Not only do we have more affordable items to purchase, but at the same time, the BGR, as it's increasing, it flows into the government, so it's more fair. But I feel like the government continues to increase fees, and what are we getting out of it? Did the services improve? Did the products improve? So we, you know, and I know my colleagues in the House are also looking into that, in the Senate. But it all trickles down. If we don't get this like organized, we're not gonna be successful in enticing more people to invest here. So, yeah.
And I know zoning has been called in informally, you know, to the Senate, and I know they're doing their public outreach.
Right.
What have you heard from them, and what's the likelihood of this becoming law this year?
So the main thing is to start the dialogue. It's going to go into committee. There's going to be more public hearings. And this is also an opportunity for the public to get involved and really get the qualitative data, not just the surface, like one person saying, the loudest person in the room saying this, but to get maybe even the quiet person that has been holding it in all this time and wants to let it out. So this bill is, you know, we're not going to rush this, but it's to let the public know that, hey, we hear your cry. This is also an opportunity for you to come in and let us know what's going on. But, you know, like if that's the number one root problem that the business community and the residents alike are complaining about, we need to do something about it. And that doesn't mean just increasing the fees or really take the time to assess. Does the way this law is being implemented, does it align with our values, culture, and the intent of why this bill was put into place? Mm-hmm. At the same time, I see like things like, let's say this area is, I've seen hearings where even the zoning office itself doesn't recommend something, and then the board like goes against the recommendation of the zoning office based on the law. So it's like, what's going on here? Like, and at the same time, I'll mind you this, I've witnessed where there's a line and then someone comes in and just bypasses everybody waiting in line. You know, like, I'm not trying to point fingers, but we really need to make sure our process, our practices are best, we're following best practices and not just have something. There's a lot of cases where people will say, oh, we cannot do this. Okay, so where does it say that? What regulation are you following?
So you want it to be fair for everyone? Yeah,
that's...
No politics.
No politics. Same thing goes with procurement. Yeah, I mean, this is an uphill battle because there's a culture here of things happening a certain way, but it's also hurting us, hurting our community. And this is an opportunity for our community to get involved in the process and really let your congressmen and senators know how you feel, especially those that this law has been really impacting. I feel for also those in the community that, let's say, maybe their grandparents leased out property and then the investor kind of bailed, and then now they're left with this building in there. Like, there's other ways for us to take care of it with the consent of the property owner without having to just take their land from them. Right? The government is here to serve the people, and we have to look at what's the best way that doesn't hurt our community in the long run.
And could I just ask, my last question is, why 5 years? Was that just a time you chose, or do you think that's enough time, or kind of the middle ground for the assessment?
I think it's enough time. It might be more like, you know, I would say 2 years having served in the legislature, even things like 2 years, it goes by quick. So to really have a good dialogue and maybe to make sure we do it right this time. And at the same time, it allows us to look at other agencies and make sure that we're streamlining this process. Yeah, that's really why I think 5 years is enough time.
All right, that's all I had to ask. Anything else you'd like to mention for the public to know that I didn't ask about?
There's, just to let the public know, because I have people asking about some of the bills that I introduced in the House, and some of those bills, unfortunately, I cannot reintroduce in the Senate because our roles are different. So anything in regards to like revenue generating and that stays in the House, but our focus here, at least with the bills that I'm going to be introducing, is more on efficiency and working with my colleagues here to get the government to be more streamlined. And I know there's several bills in the House coming up also that aims to do that as well. We have a lot of laws out there that are actually good laws, but the challenge is the implementation of it, right? Like with commerce, there's been a law in there that it was supposed to be digitized and easy. Nowadays, gas is expensive, so if people can go on Facebook, they should be, like they can easily go online and pay whatever fees they need to. But at the same time, I'm not to say that we're going to abandon paper, but if only 5% of the population need that special assistance on the paper application, then we can streamline and make things more available online, not only for people on island, but even our brothers and sisters that are off island as well. There's agencies like, for example, the court, the e-filing, good. We should be moving in those directions. The college with online registration and everything, we need to get up with the times. And sometimes this paper process, it just takes time. It bottlenecks everything. We have this Munis system, very expensive software, but then we're still embedding old practices into the system, which defeats the purpose. We might as well have gone through a more cheaper system. But I just ask the community for maybe not the patience, but just continued understanding. And if there's anything out there, please reach out to us. The whole goal is to really get to work and get things done for the benefit of the community. Thank you, Zensijo Smasi.